So today we've got Mark Rhodes with us, CEO of DHum,
Yeah.
Commercial dehumidification specialist. Welcome.
Welcome.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. Yeah, nice.
So for people that don't know you, tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah.
How did it all start?
There's two ways to answer that, I suppose. It's how did it start for me and how did it start for the business are probably two different stories. But to give you a background to the company, if you like, DHum, it's an engineering company, but it's an engineering company that specialises in humidity control and product drying. We manufacture industrial dehumidifiers, industrial dehumidification that's born from a technology called desiccant rotors. But I suppose where we focus our attention, where we specialise, is actually the application of that technology. We're out there really trying to support and help other businesses, other industries with problems that they have in their production, perhaps, problems that they face within their business that are all humidity related. So I suppose to give you an example, these cold store distribution centres, what they do is they take in frozen goods and then distribute it to a further network. Yeah. But these are massive buildings that are held at minus 25 and no different than your freezer at home. Yeah. They get ice, basically. Our technology is to prevent ice from forming within these massive cold store distribution centres. Yeah. So we can apply that the technology that we manufacture to prevent ice in a cold store distribution centre. That allows a cold store distribution centre to basically keep producing. It becomes a massive problem for them. They can't use forklift trucks. There's slipping, there's ice formation that becomes a hazard and a risk to people. Yeah. And we can basically take all of that away. So it means that they can produce 24/7, 7 days a week, all year round, basically.
So anyone like myself, the main exposure you have to dehumidifiers is trying to stop the damp at home. Yeah. Or the moisture on windows coming up when you buy a dehumidifier. But you mentioned desiccant dehumidification. What does that mean? How is that different?
So the way that I suppose the question, answering your question, the difference between desiccant dehumidifiers and like a home-based dehumidifier is very different. The way that it removes moisture from the air is done in a very different way. A home dehumidifier, the way it works, it uses what's called refrigeration, which is a bit like the system that's used in a fridge at home or a freezer at home. It's quite a domestic technology, and what it does is it relies on its ability to cool the air and condense water. Right. And by condensing the water out of the air, it's removing the water from the air, so the air comes out a little bit drier. Right. It's got a lot of limitations because when you're cooling air down, you can only cool it to a certain point before you start making ice, which is one of the problems that we fixed in the cold store distribution. So it does have a lot of limitations. Desiccant dehumidification does it in a very, very different way. Right. So within our equipment is what's called a desiccant rotor. Right. Now, a desiccant rotor is like a big wheel. If you can imagine something like a car wheel, they go a lot bigger than that, but if you can imagine like a car wheel, but it's made from a material called high performance silica gel. Right. Now, that material is what's called very hygroscopic. It's naturally a very dry material, so it wants to absorb moisture, wants to absorb water. Right. Now, if you can imagine this big wheel, if you like, but with perforations and holes going all the way through it. Right. And what that allows us to do is blow the air through the actual rotor. And as we blow the air through the rotor, the air comes into contact with this desiccant material, this desiccant high-performance silica gel. So what happens is the water molecules that are in the air are attracted to this very dry material and absorbed into the rotor. Okay. And what that means is as you pass the air through it, the moisture in the air is absorbed into the rotor, and what comes out the other side is very dry air. But because it's done through absorption, there's no limitations to what it can achieve. So it can remove moisture from air, even if the air's at -25. That's what we do in the cold store system. So it's very, very efficient, very, very effective at removing water from air. But so what it can achieve is quite extreme results, very dry atmospheres, hugely dry atmospheres. So it's used on an industrial level because there are some applications that we get involved with. For example, at the moment, a boom industry is lithium battery manufacturing. These batteries can't be manufactured. Lithium's very reactive to moisture, as I would describe it. So it reacts to the moisture in the air. These are complete factories and production facilities that are held at what's called a -40 dew point. Now, what a -40 dew point means is you could cool the air all the way down to -40 and still not remove moisture from it. There's so little moisture in the air, you can put ice into this room and it will dry the ice that's put into the room. So you can't produce ice in an environment like that purely because the air is so dry.
Sure.
So that our technology, desiccant rotor, is the only way to produce that sort of environment.
Right. Seems like it's a really there's many uses over many industries.
It's so diverse. I would say that's one of the things that when you come into this industry is the first thing that you deal with is just how involved humidity is in our everyday life and how diverse the applications that we get involved with. So another example would be Airbus, for example. They manufacture aircraft, but the way a wing is made over in Broughton is it's moved through different hangars around the airfield itself. So different hangars do a different part of the manufacturing process of a wing.
Right.
But a hangar itself is controlled temperature and humidity wise because the material, this raw aluminium, has to be maintained in a certain environment. However, to move it from one hangar to another then becomes difficult because ambient, unfortunately, doesn't do what we tell it to, or it doesn't do what we want it to. So we have to create an environment so we can move it between hangars in a controlled manner.
Wow.
So Airbus came to us and said, how do we do this?
Yeah.
So previously, before working with us, the only way they could think of doing it was coating the material to protect it during its transportation, and then removing the coating when it got to the next hangar, work on the billet or the aluminium itself, process it, recoat it, and then move it to the next hangar. But the material that they were using, they couldn't use anymore.
Right.
So they basically said, is there another way of doing it? Is there another option?
Yeah.
So we designed them a transportation system that allows them to move the trailer, if you like, it's called a Corrie system, into a hangar. It measures the environment within that hangar. They load the material in.
Yeah.
They close the transportation system up. It then replicates what's in the hangar inside the actual transportation system. It allows them to move it to the next hangar. It then measures the environment inside the next hangar and makes sure it's safe to unload, if you like, and open. And then when it's reached equilibrium with that environment, it then opens up and it allows them to process the equipment. So it's like I say, it's so diverse.
Yeah.
It can be a cold store one day. It can be battery manufacturing another day. It can be a pharmaceutical application, a confectioner another day. It can be aircraft engineering.
I feel like every time I talk to you, I learn something new.
I've been doing it 20 years, so there's a lot of stories in there.
Yeah. The applications of it just blow my mind, actually.
I think that's what keeps it interesting. I think every single day is a new opportunity and a new learning for us. I think one of the challenges for us is to, I suppose, educate people as to the effects of humidity, the problems that they're seeing within their business, how it is humidity related. And I think that one of the biggest challenges is because as a person, as a human, we act very much to temperature. So we walk into a room and into a space and feel that change in temperature. So if it's 15 degrees in a room, you feel cold. If it's 25 degrees C in a room, you feel warm. And we've got like this sweet spot, if you like, around 21 degrees C, and a person feels about right. What we don't feel and what we don't react to much is the humidity of the environment around us.
Yeah.
So we don't associate with it very well. And that's part of the education process that we go into, because everything else around us, unfortunately, is exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
Everything else around us is reacting to humidity. So we talked about classic cars before. The reason a car corrodes is 100% a reaction to the moisture that's in the air around it, not the temperature.
No.
Steel doesn't feel warm or cold unless it's some very extremes. But what it does do is react to the moisture in the air around it a lot. But we don't feel that. We don't react to it as a person, so we don't perhaps associate the two things. But corrosion on steel is 100% preventable. Yeah. And that's to do with humidity. If you keep the humidity below 40% RH, you can't make corrosion on steel.
I suppose it can reduce costs for energy as well, because it's more controlled. You don't have to keep heating on or whatever it is, whatever you think your solution would be. There's cost savings involved as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The big driver at the moment is energy efficiency. So we're currently working with a very large confectioners, one of the world's largest confectioners, on what's called their stoving process.
Right.
A stoving application is a way that a confectioner makes wine gums, jelly babies.
Right.
They make gelatin products, they make foam-based products. So when you get the little egg sweets that you get, they've got a foam and a gelatin on it. So it's a foam white and then the gelatin yellow centre. That's manufactured in a stoving process. So one large confectioners, we're reducing their energy usage on site by... how much are we saving?
1.7 we got it to, didn't we?
Yeah, well, as a percentage-wise.
What was it, 40%?
It might be more than that. Yeah. 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 So from I suppose from their point of view, this confectionery company, they've been manufacturing gelatin-based product for a long period of time, since the 60s on this particular site.
Right.
And it's a process that they've used. It's a process that's been running since the 60s. But very little modifications and improvements have happened over this period of time. Sure. And it's like anything else in industry, you get a better understanding of things, you get improvements and developments that perhaps could be implemented into your business, and they've just not done that. Yeah. But we've got to a point now where they have started to see the downfall in not evolving, I suppose, and not improving the process. And we've been working with them for over 12 months, and the energy savings that we can make them are over 60% basically. So we can reduce the amount of energy to produce that very same product in exactly the same way by nearly 60%, or just over 60%, sorry.
It's unreal, isn't it? You don't really see any other areas these days where you can reduce costs like that.
No, it's quite dramatic, but we're fortunate with the fact that the technology that you're using is back from the 60s. Yeah. But it's important to them, because you look at a company like that and they're no different than any other company. They're trading on a profit margin. They have to make money to survive, basically. So if you can make that same product at 60% less cost, that's a massive driver for them. Yeah. The return on investments like that, because that's how most businesses operate. We've got examples of return on investments in weeks rather than years. Yeah. In the stove drying application, that return on investment's nearly 12 months.
Right. And
for most businesses, a return on a capital investment within 12 months is enormous, because if you can imagine, the last capital investment was back in the 60s. Well, if our new system lasts, as long, 60 years itself, it's paid for itself in the first year. Yeah. Everything after that is pure profit.
So is humidity control isn't something that many people get involved in. How did it all? How do you get exposed to that?
It's quite a niche area of engineering, is how I would describe it. We've got a very, very deep and complex understanding of a very niche area of engineering, a very small area of engineering. Like you say, it's not something that people really get involved with very much or get exposed to. That's why I said that a large percentage of what we do is almost like an education process, because we want people to understand it. We want people to know it. We want people to see the impact that humidity is having on them, their environment, the business, and things like that. And we spend a lot of time trying to teach, trying to show, trying to explain, trying to demonstrate, and people do get it. How do you get into it? I suppose for me to answer that question, it was just a happy step along the way, is how I would describe it. It's almost by accident rather than design, but it's one thing that's piqued my interest for 20 years. I find it absolutely fascinating. Purely because it's so diverse in who we work with. We get to see all sorts of weird and wonderful sites, applications, businesses, companies. I would say every day, for us, it's almost like working on a TV program where they say, how do they do it? That's pretty much our everyday days. You're going into different sites, different factories to see how they make things. Because I think to a large extent, that's where our journey starts with customers. They come to us with a problem, and they know they've got a problem. They think it's humidity related. This is my problem, what do we do? And in order for us to answer that question, we first need to understand their business to a very deep level. So, for example, a confectionery company, we have a very good understanding of how to make a gelatin product. We can make a wine gum, but not because we want to make wine gums, but in order to improve the way a wine gum's made, we need to understand how it's made so that we can work and develop on how to improve that process, basically through humidity control and drying.
I suppose they can, if you're reducing the time it takes to dry something they've been cooking, without knowing the exact terms, they can do more cooks in a day.
Yes.
So
massively important to them. So some products, for example, can take over 24. They're almost Goldilocks zone, or their golden zone is to be able to produce in a 24-hour period, because that's how we work basically on a 24-hour clock. So you can look at a complete production facility, and if they have, let's say, just one oven, but it takes 30 hours to produce in that one oven, it takes it out of like a sink, a daily sink. So if we can get a 24-hour production, production cycle, it means every single day they can produce.
Right.
And if you're running 7 days a week, it means you get 7 cycles every single week. If you run into a 30-hour cycle, unfortunately, that normally means that you can only run that same oven 3 times a week.
Right.
And it doesn't sound like much, but that 6-hour difference can be a 50% production loss. And that's what we focus on. So if we can produce a stoving cycle that allows them to produce within that 24-hour period, that one oven works 7 times a week as opposed to 3.
I mean, you must have some funny stories about that kind of thing, the improvements that have been made from where a business was to afterwards over the years that you worked. And do any come to mind? You just have to name it.
Absolutely. I think for me, I think as an engineer, you look at everything that you do and you try your very best to get the best improvements that you possibly can. And the one I think I've taken the most positivity from it, how I describe it, is foam underlay drying. And I like it for quite a lot of different reasons. It's got environmental implications that we benefit from, but what they do as a company, so what this foam underlay company do is they manufacture a big foam block, and these foam blocks are used for various different applications in various different industries, from chair manufacturing to car manufacturing. So they make a foam material, a bit like a memory foam that you'd see in a mattress. It's not exactly the same, but it's a similar product.
Something like that.
Yeah, exactly. But in the production of making a seat cushion, in the production of making a car seat cushion, and various other different industries where they use this foam, there's an awful lot of waste. They don't need all of the block, they just need a percentage of it because they form and shape the pieces that they need. So the question was always, what do we do with all this waste? What do we do with the foam that we don't need?
Yeah.
So that same company then developed a way of reutilising it. What they do is they take all these different pieces of waste foam and all this different waste material and reprocess it. And what that reprocessing looks like is it goes through a nibbler, and what the nibbler does is it resizes it down into 10mm pieces, depending on what kind of block they're trying to make, but it will make it into small little pieces, 10mm pieces. Them 10mm pieces are then transported to what's called a form, but before they work into the form or fall into the form, it's mixed with an adhesive. Right. So they take all these 10mm pieces from all these different pieces of foam and all these different bits of block, and it's mixed with an adhesive. It goes into a form, so they can reform it into a shape that they can use. Right. But in order to activate the adhesive, they inject it with steam.
Okay.
So if you can imagine that you've just injected a massive sponge with an awful lot of water, that large foam block that they now make is now full of water. It's holding over 60 kilos of water. Yeah. And because of that, it's unusable until it's dry. So what they used to do before they worked with us is this would just be stored in a massive, massive warehouse, a huge building. They're making a foam block that's 1.5 meters across and up to 2 meters high, and they're making one of them every 2 minutes. So if you can imagine, that's an awful lot of product, an awful lot of material that they then have to put in a warehouse. Yeah. And what they would do is heat a warehouse to over 30 degrees C to try and promote all this water to come out of it, to allow it to dry, and hold it there for about 5 days. Right. So if you can imagine how many blocks you're making in 2 minutes and how many you can make in 5 days, that's a very, very big warehouse. And a very big warehouse to warm to 30 degrees C is an expensive thing to do. So I developed a drying system for them probably 12, 15 years ago. And what it allows them to do is as this foam block comes out of the mould, it then goes to our drying station, and within 1.5 minutes, all of the moisture is removed. So it means you can now just peel it, reprocess it, and make a carpet underlay from it. So an entire factory, an entire warehouse was left empty overnight, basically.
Wow. And all the heating of it and everything.
Oh yeah. Now, that application paid for itself the very minute that it turned on. The very second that it turned on, they had their investment back. Yeah. But I think as a business, that's where we position ourselves. We like to get involved in unique applications. We like to fix the problems nobody else has fixed before. We like to work with companies that can challenge us. And we like to look at it with fresh and new eyes. We like the opportunity to really break new ground for companies, because the difference that we can make can be immense. That company, like I said, it changed them overnight. The very minute that it turned on, they changed. Yeah. Airbus, when we worked with them, the minute that we went live with the transportation system, it changed the way that they made wings. But we've done this confectionery companies with stove drying. We've changed the way that they stove dry.
Yeah. Seems to be the profitability scales goes up massively as well.
That's a driver for every business. Yeah. That we understand that their focus 100% is to make themselves more profitable. Yeah. And if we can support them in doing that, we're very happy to support them in doing that, because it helps everybody. Brings the cost of the product down, it makes the consumer more efficient when they come to buying.
Yeah. Did you, is everything you do custom? Is it all?
To a large extent, we make a standard range of equipment. The standard range of equipment is used in known applications, in known industries regularly. Pharmaceutical companies use them and understand the equipment and the identification of equipment. Cold store distribution centres, because we've been working with them a long time, they recognise the equipment, they recognise the technology now, they understand why they need it, who they need to go to for it. But there's an infinite number of industries out there that we haven't worked with yet, and we look for the opportunity to do it, because that's, I would say as a business we probably do 30% of our work with new and interesting customers, and 70% with regular customers that know what they want. We know what the solution is, we know what the fix is. So as they're growing, we grow with them basically.
So what are the main challenges for you as a business?
I'd say it's probably the same that it's always been, and it's the education process. It's getting people to recognise that the problems that they're facing in their business, if it's humidity related, are fixable. In order to become more efficient at producing, if you're drying a product, if you're manufacturing a product and it's moisture related, there are improvements that can be had. There are changes that can be made, and quite often I think our difficulty is getting them to understand that. So I'll give you another example. For example, donuts. Donuts are frozen through a spiral freezer. Cookies are frozen through a spiral freezer. Ready meals are cooked through a spiral freezer. Peas are cooled and frozen through a spiral freezer. And the reason for that, what a spiral freezer does is it's a big chamber, and it has a large conveyor belt that works itself around this freezer. So if you can imagine a large freezer, it's probably 10 metres wide, 10 metres deep, and probably equally as high. And it's held at -30 degrees C. So this newly cooked product goes into this -30 degrees C on a spiral conveyor. And as it works its way through this spiral conveyor and through the freezer itself, it's brought down to a core temperature, typically at -10. And then it comes out the other side as a product that's frozen at -10. It can then go into a cold store distribution centre, and it's distributed to the supermarkets and wherever else it needs to go. But if you can imagine a big room, 10 metres by 10 metres by 10 metres high, some are bigger, some are smaller, with two openings, because you've got to get product continuously in and product continuously out, they become a solid block of ice in a very short period of time. We've worked with spiral freezers that would be frozen solid in 24 hours. So if you're trying to run a production that's running 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365, but every 24 hours you have to defrost your freezer, all of this is lost production. All of this is lost opportunity. This is all more production that you could have made, but you have to stop because of the limitations of your freezer, and it's just become a solid block of ice. We've added our technology to spiral freezers now, and we've got spiral freezers working in operation that don't need defrost. The only time they go off is to be cleaned. That's it. There's no ice formation. We've got companies out there, when we first did some of the testing, where they'd have two spiral freezers next to one another. We applied our technology to one and not the other one, just to see what the difference was. And within 2 days, one's a snow dome or an igloo, and the other one looks like it's just been cleaned. Looks like it's just been turned on. So that's another application we work with. But it's like I said, we're just so diverse in what we do. It's the education that becomes difficult, because you're speaking to, it might be a nuclear storage facility one day, wing manufacturer another day, spiral freezer application another day, a confectioner another day, a foam drying product another day. All of them moisture related, all of them to do with humidity, all of them to do with drying, but so diverse.
It's crazy, isn't it?
I
usually
ask good way.
what are your future challenges? But it seems like you guys are a solution for a lot of production challenges that everyone has, whether it's storage or making things, continuous production of stuff.
Yeah.
It seems like you guys are more of a solution to everyone else. So, do you have any challenges that you see in the future for the industry?
Not personally. The challenge of the industry has always been the same. I've been doing this for 20 years. And throughout that entire period, it really has just been the education process. The opportunity for the business, the opportunity for the industry is great because what we can support with, what we can help with, it's almost infinite basically, but it comes back to what I said, it's the education process. It's getting people to associate problems that they're having in their process, in their business, in their industries are moisture related. But the very second that realisation sinks in, it normally comes pretty easy for us basically. It's just allowing people to see what the problem was in the first place. It's great because it does mean we work all over the world. We've installed our equipment in China, Indonesia, just all over Singapore, large manufacturing businesses throughout the world that use our equipment, our technology, and we've supported.
Amazing. So you as a business owner, and I said the idea for this podcast is because I was networking a lot and I was talking to people, and the interesting thing was not really the business, it was them and how they got into it, how they grew the business, and the elements of running them that were challenges that they enjoyed, and the reasons why. And when it comes to running a business of quite a large size, do you have any advice for people?
You know what, I watch videos and stuff like this, and you hear other people that run businesses, and I would say that the advice that's given out to people tends to be a common one and the right one, which is, number one, find something that you love first. Something that drives your passion. Because running your own company, you need that to keep you going every single day, because we all come across challenges, but to run your own business, and I think allow it to grow or create an environment where it can grow, you need that passion to keep you driven every single day. And I think if you come to work with that drive and that passion every single morning, every single day, what's required of you is quite obvious quite quickly. And so I think, the number one thing I'd say to somebody is find something that you truly enjoy doing on a daily basis. There isn't a moment of regret.
No.
And I think if you find that, everything becomes, I'm not saying it's easy by any stretch of the imagination, but it's everything becomes clear.
Place.
Yeah, I think so, because I've worked in other industries before. I've worked in banking for a long period of time. I did very well in banking, and it just wasn't me though. No. I needed something more. I think I was always meant to be an engineer. As a kid, it was obvious. I used to take things apart. Growing up with my granddad, who was an engineer, I magnetised to all the things he did. I think people are wired for different things, and it's finding what you're wired for, I think.
I find it's a lot easier. There's less stress involved if you enjoy what you do.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what it is you're doing. If you enjoy it, a lot of the stresses go away.
Yeah. And then having an infinite amount of drive, I think helps as well. Yeah.
It's one thing being good at what you do and enjoying it, and as managing people as well. And having large numbers of staff. Is there any advice you give for people that are recruiting a lot or they're struggling with people?
I would say it's it's try and find people with that same level of drive and focus, and that same level of passion, that same level of want to actually do the job. I personally don't believe I should be the person that makes somebody do the job that they've come to do. I think that's something that they should be doing on their own. They should want to come to work. They should, if you find somebody who's already driven, somebody who already comes to work with that requirement to achieve, somebody who's already woke up in the morning and thought, what do I want to get out of today? What do I want to achieve by lunchtime? What do I want to achieve by the end of the day? I think it makes your life a lot easier, because that desire, from my observation, you can't teach people. Some people have drive, some people have desire, some people just don't, and it's finding the ones that do, because they're a lot easier to point in the right direction. You're not having to make them work hard, they already want to work hard. You just have to perhaps point them in the right direction to achieve and educate them. And that for me is I suppose one of the things that I've focused on is finding the right people. I think most business owners would probably say the same thing. It's your success in your business is by finding the right people and surrounding yourself with them.
With one of the other standard questions we ask is how do you define success?
That's a good question, that one.
It's not always monetary.
You know what, I would actually say to a large extent, a lot of people that would answer it in business probably don't associate it with money. There's probably a lot that do. That isn't where I get my measurement of success. My measurement of success is fixing problems that probably other people haven't fixed in the past, finding solutions that other people haven't found in the past, and doing an exceptionally good job beyond the expectation of the person that I'm working with. So when I can take a foam drying application from 5 days down to 1.5 minutes of drying, that was far beyond their expectation. It was something I knew was potentially achievable, but I didn't promise it until I'd achieved it. But my sense of pride and my sense of, or measurement of a good job is that, which is I can take an application and a process where it's took you 5 days for the last 20 years of operation to dry a block, and I can dry it in 1.5 minutes, and the only question that you will ask yourself afterwards would be, why didn't I work with this guy sooner? Why, the money I could have made in the last 20 years of operation if I'd have known this guy sooner.
If that was me, I'd be like, you'd just be thinking of all everything that you'd spent over.
Yeah. I think we all do that. I think we all we all have moments where we question, why didn't we do this sooner? I would hope that all of the customers that I work with, as much as they don't say it to my face, I would hope that they sit in the background and think, I just wish I knew him a bit sooner. But it is. I've had, I work with another company who I saw grow in a very, very accelerated rate, basically. So this was, it was a butcher, he had his own butchers, but he developed a maturation process that basically, he was a butcher that developed, it was a way of maturating bacon, so it was dry aging bacon and dry curing bacon. So during this process, you cover it in salt and other seasonings, basically. So as the bacon itself is drying, it's also picking up flavours from its surroundings. So its flavours come from the powders that you've surrounded it with to mature, if you like, or to go through its maturation process. I'm not sure how eloquent. So, how do I describe it? So I worked with a butcher, quite an old school butcher, but he had an extremely good reputation in the industry. So he'd competed an awful lot with his dry aging of bacon, and won quite a lot of awards for the way that he was dry aging bacon. And part of it was the drying of the bacon itself enhances the flavours,
right.
but also it goes through a coating process where they put salt to attract the moisture out of it, and seasonings to give it enhance its flavour and improve its flavours. So he'd won an awful lot of awards for it. It was well recognised in the industry for what he'd done, but he was still relatively small butcher that had developed a very well flavoured product. Another company picked up on that, and the growth that he went through and that business went through with their bacon curing was massive.
Right.
Their product now, 100%, Bill's product from many years ago is seen in Asda, seen in Morrison's, seen in Sainsbury's, seen in Co-op. It's made under their name, it's made under the supermarket's name. The dry aging process is the same for all of them. And I'd developed his dry aging with him many moons ago, so I went through this growth transition. They're now the largest producer in Europe. It's manufactured here in the UK. And I didn't realise, I thought I had an important part to play, but I didn't realise how important the part I played in his development, in his growth was, until I took another customer to see him, so they could talk about the experience that they'd had with me. And his parting words to my client was, without this guy, none of this would exist, because they couldn't control the humidity in the maturation rooms without our equipment. And if they couldn't control the humidity in the maturation rooms, they couldn't make the maturation rooms the size that they did. And if they couldn't make them the size that they did, they couldn't produce. They couldn't be Europe's biggest producer because they didn't have the technology and the ability to do it. And that's where I get my measurement of success from. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's what brings you joy, isn't it? The pride in what you do and the effect you might have on someone else's world.
Yeah.
As well.
Enjoy challenges.
Yeah. One thing I didn't touch on before was it sounds like there's quite a long process from first contact with the client to the design and the implementation and it being, how long does that usually take?
It's quite broad, is how I would describe it. If they're known applications, known customers, known industries, selection process and all the way to an order can be an hour or so. It's very quick because we know what's needed, we know what the application is, we know what the solution is, we know what the equipment is. I've worked on certain applications for over 10 years before it's gone ahead. So, and it's quite often, I suppose to give you a more realistic answer to that, is if it's a new process, a new application, normally the first few months of working with people is allowing us to understand their business.
Sure.
It's understanding their process, understanding their application, understanding what they want to achieve. And there's a lot of work that goes into that. We have to study the product, we have to study the material, we have to understand it in a way sometimes beyond what the customer themselves know of it.
Sure.
So confectioning is a perfect example. We can ask questions that you would assume they know the answers to and don't. But there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
The processes might be old processes and no one ever asked the question. But certain questions we need to know the answer to, and it can take a long time, not a long time, but it takes time for us to understand the process to the point where we can guarantee the improvements that they're looking for, because that's what we trade on. If we say we're going to achieve something, that's what we achieve basically. That's what you want from us, and that's what we will deliver. So it can take 18 months, it can take 2 years before you get the purchase order, but we enjoy the journey as well.
Amazing. I think that seems like a really good place to finish. If anyone wants to find you guys, it's thehum.com.
Yep, that's us.
And I think if anyone's listened to this, they'd be daft not to at least make contact and see what you can do.
Talking to us costs absolutely nothing. We like to travel, we like to see new customers, we like to see new applications, new industries. We're learning all the time and we want to learn all the time. We know the applications we've been involved with extremely well, but we want to know more. And like I said, we can make big differences, we can make big changes to people, and speaking to us costs absolutely nothing.
Amazing. We'll make sure contact details are on all the everything we put it on, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music and YouTube and all that. So there's plenty more. But thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.